This is a practice sample that you can make and practice the simple ways to make a knit one, purl one buttonhole. And I just have 2 of them here, both very easy to do. Start by casting on 10 stitches and knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1 across. When you go back, it's still knit 1, purl 1, knit 1, purl 1. All the rows begin with knit 1. Now, when you're making a button band, you're going to have to make a decision about which side is the right side. And to put in this 1 stitch buttonhole, you will start with the right side facing you. And let's just see how big this 1 stitch buttonhole is. Here I am with my 1/2 inch button, and this is sport weight yarn this time. And there we go. So this is about right for a 1/2 inch button, which is, if you look at it, that's a nice size button for that band. The recipe is to work 5 stitches. So that would be knit, purl, knit, purl, knit. Then yarn over, knit 2 together, and purl, knit, purl. The next row is just back to the ordinary ribbing, and that is all there is to making a simple 1 stitch buttonhole. Now I use 1 stitch buttonholes quite a lot, even in adult garments. See how beautifully that works? And these buttonholes are on a worsted weight knit, and these buttons are 1/2 inch buttons, and I've never had any trouble with them staying closed. Here's an example of a 1 stitch buttonhole on a band that is going in the other direction, and it works just fine for that as well. To make this vertical buttonhole, you're going to knit this part with a separate piece of yarn, and then this part that gets sewed to the garment gets knitted with the garment yarn. So what you would do to make this buttonhole, and I hope you will practice it, is you will come up to the point where you want to make the buttonhole, and starting on the garment side, work over to the middle, then drop that yarn, then pick up a new piece of yarn and work from the middle over. Then when you knit back, work from here to here, 5 stitches, knit, purl, knit, with the extra piece of yarn, drop the yarn, pick the garment yarn back up, and do the purl, knit, purl part of the row. Then return the same way with the garment yarn, knit, knit, drop it, pick up the extra yarn, and do purl, knit, purl with it. And when you have it long enough, you're going to knit back over to the center with the extra yarn, then pick up the garment yarn and just continue with the garment yarn over, and then the next row garment yarn all the way over, back and forth, back and forth. So you began the extra yarn in the middle of the row, you ended it in the middle of the row. That's why the 2 ends are coming from the middle of the row. When you finish the garment, you have to hide those 2 ends on the inside of the button band. They don't show very much, and it is a beautiful buttonhole. It will hold quite a large button. Be careful not to make it too big. So I hope you will practice this button band and then maybe keep it in a notebook with the information on how to knit it. When I made this sweater, I wanted to use these big fancy buttons, so I installed a vertical buttonhole. This band was knitted separately and sewed on later, and the vertical buttonholes are easy to make, but you do need a second piece of thread. So before you knit one, you need to measure off a few yards of the yarn and set that aside so you'll have it ready to go. And when you're making a whole string of them, it's nice to have an extra little small ball of the stuff. But look how well that buttons. This is a nice textured button with a pretty significant shank on it. And button another one. It's a large V-neck cardigan for a woman, and that's a good example, I think, of a vertical buttonhole. Now, I like these vertical buttonholes on the Knit One Purl One ribbing because look how they fit in with the stitch. You don't have something cutting into the vertical line of the stitches. Here's one more little button band tip. You can knit your button band holes first, starting here, knit a buttonhole, work up, a buttonhole, work up, a buttonhole, work up, a buttonhole, and keep on knitting all the way down because the other side where you're going to sew the buttons doesn't need any holes. Make it an inch or two too long, unravel the extra, and then do a bind off. That way you don't have to do a 1x1 ribbing graft anywhere up here. So many patterns tell you to start at the bottom and knit the button band up to the top and then do a graft on one of the shoulders. But my lazy method works just great, and it gives you a very beautiful, perfect finish, and nobody can find a graft inside or out because there isn't a graft.